Okay, it is now 12:05, so we'll get started with this. Before that, hello, my name is Chris Cortez. I'm one of the graphic designers here at the Veteran Success Center. In addition, thank you for all those who provide your emails at this time or student ID numbers. If you have not done so, please let me receive those by the end of the presentation. And now we'll continue with the keys of long-lasting love, presented by our Dr. Kelly Campbell from the Department of Psychology.
Okay, great. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm really sorry for any background noise. I'm having kitchen renovations and I've just moved, so I don't even know where my headphones are. So it's just a little bit chaotic, but that's the nature of working from home these days. For those of you who don't know me, I have done a couple presentations for this audience before, but perhaps you don't know me. So I'm a professor in the Department of Psychology, and my research expertise is in couple relationships and friendships. And so this topic today really aligns with my work. I'm going to try to be sure we have some time at the end for question and answer. And so with that, let's get started. This is the outline for the session. And so the first thing I'll go into is really taking assessment of yourself. So, what kind of upbringing did you have? Who are you at this stage in your life? And then we'll move into the types of love that typically underlie long-term relationships or marriage within North America. And then I'm going to wrap up with suggestions for if your goal, and many people's goal really is to maintain a long term relationship that's happy and flourishing and healthy, then I'm going to let you know what are those key attributes that lead to that type of a relationship. Okay, so starting with our first point, just taking assessment of yourself. I have a couple slides on this. So here's the first slide. I want to talk about when you were growing up, what was life like at home? And so some people, they grew up with two parents, some people one parent, some people in the foster care system, some people with a grandparent. There's all different kinds of arrangements. So you need to think through what was your upbringing like. And I'm going to go into a couple different points here. The first one being attachment style. So just be thinking about your own life as I talk about this. And so attachment style is basically every baby is born with this desire to form a bond. So everybody has that desire from the start. But the type of bond that you form with your primary caregivers, whoever was the main person or persons taking care of you, the type of bond you form is based on the socialization that you received in your family. And so I'm going to describe a few different types, and you can think through maybe what your own type was. Okay. All right. So the first type, so there's going to be basically one secure style and then several insecure styles. So the secure style is where when you were a baby and a little kid and you expressed a need. So when you're a baby, you cry. That's how you express a need. You need something, so you cry. What happened? So in the secure style, when you cried, did someone consistently come and provide warm care and know what you needed? So they go, oh, she or he's thirsty. That's what they need. They need to be fed or they need something to drink. Um, they might try that out. It doesn't work. You're still crying. They go, oh, they just need some comfort. So then they just hug you and then you calm down and they go, oh, okay, yeah. So that parent's pretty good at figuring it out. They try different things and they keep trying until you're settled. And this happens over time consistently. So every time you cry, that's what happens. Someone comes and tries to figure out what it is, and they're pretty good at figuring it out and they meet your needs. As you develop words, you start to express those feelings and needs, and you go, I'm hungry. And then someone responds and brings you what you need. Okay? Then what happens then is that you learn people can be relied upon. When you express your needs, someone will actually care and try to fulfill your needs. So as an adult, that's what happens too. You get into a romantic relationship, something bad happens, like your partner hurts your feelings for whatever reason. You tell your partner, that hurt my feelings, because of this and that. And they're responsive. They go, oh, I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. Well, now that I know, I'll try in the future to not let that happen again. And then they really don't let that happen again. Okay, so that's a good model where what you expect happens. Okay. What you learned from when you were a child, you replicate it as an adult and it works. If you're with a partner who doesn't respond, who goes, well, you shouldn't have had such hurt feelings, like toughen up, and they're not responding in the way that you expect, you're not going to want to stick around with that person. It doesn't match what you expect. Okay. Then there's the insecure styles. I'll go over two types. So one type is where the primary caregiver sometimes was available and sometimes wasn't. So maybe you had like a parent who was pretty good, but they weren't always around. Like they went in and out of your life. Or maybe it was just, the circumstances prohibited them from providing that type of care regularly. Like they had a job that they had to go to that they really couldn't be there all the time. So what you learn there is that sometimes people fulfill your needs, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they aren't. So when you become an adult, you're kind of worried that's going to happen. So if you meet a romantic partner and they seem great, you don't want them to be gone. You're anxious. It's called an anxious ambivalent style. You're anxious that they might be out of your life or not available. So you get a little bit clingy. You might be the type that like calls too often or sends too many texts, or if they're not responsive, like maybe they're at work, you're like, "Where are you?" And you overreact in a way that a secure person wouldn't. And what normally happens is, especially in the initial stages, that repels a person and they're like, this is like too weird, too much. And so then that reconfirms your idea about what people are like. They're like, see, now they're gone. Now they're not responding, or now they want to break up. And so these models that you have, these ideas about how relationships work, they basically get reconfirmed by how you're acting. You create that reality through your own actions. Okay, so that's an insecure type. The third type, which is another insecure type, is the avoidant one. And that's where you basically just didn't get much care at all. And so, your parents or your caregivers were neglectful. They did not respond when you cried or when you expressed a need. And so as adults, you basically feel like that people cannot be relied upon. Why would you even tell someone what you need? It's useless because they can't fulfill your needs. So you would prefer to be independent, relying on yourself only. Or some people, they are being independent, they're relying on themselves, but they really long for that relationship and wish they could have it. But every time they start getting close to someone, they feel like claustrophobic and like they don't want to let their guard down because being vulnerable doesn't feel good to them. They get too worried they'll get hurt again. Okay, so those are the attachment styles. So you have to think of what style do you have, and maybe some people they have a mix. Like sometimes you could have a secure style with women and an insecure style with men, for example. It could be a gendered type, or you're just a mix. Like you have some secure because you had good friends who taught you how to be secure, and maybe romantic partners that you dated that taught you that, but you still had that insecure style from your upbringing. So you can have a bit of a mix, and you can go online and you can take an assessment, do a search for attachment style assessment. You'll respond to a bunch of questions and you'll find out your style. Okay, so that's the first thing, because if you're in the insecure style, you're going to want to learn how to change to be in the secure style. Otherwise, you're not going to have a healthy relationship. And that's where therapy can come in to help you change. Okay, the second point here is your role models. So, what role models did you have growing up? And so, did they teach you things like, were you able to see two people expressing love toward one another, hugging, kissing, saying, I love you? Were you able to see people engage in an argument and actually resolve it? Some parents think that it's not healthy to argue in front of their kids. And so they purposely don't do it. They might even start an argument. This is even worse. They start an argument in front of the kids and then they go in, the bedroom to resolve it. And so the child sees an argument start and never sees it get resolved. So you need role models for these things: how to express love, how to have a healthy relationship, how to get through conflict in a healthy way. And if you didn't have those things, just know that you need to work on yourself before you're going to end up in a great relationship that you're seeking. And therapy can definitely help. And we have great therapists on campus. So most people, many people grew up in a dysfunctional environment. For one reason or another. And so just be open to that therapy to help you get to the place you need to be to get into a good relationship. Okay, so now you're an adult. Here are some of the things you want to kind of you want to work on before you get into a relationship. Some of you might be married already, and that's fine. You can still work on these things. So the first one is values. Everybody has their own values. And so these are unlikely to change. Once you have your values, um, there's other things that could change. For example, on this slide, you see likes and dislikes. Those things could change, but values are not really going to change for the most part. So it's very important that you be matched with your partner on values. Um, you know, Matching and similarity, I can't emphasize it enough. It's really, really important, and especially with respect to values. So let me give you an example. Sometimes I show this video in my class where these couples are responding to different questions. And the interviewer will say something like, do you think it's your partner's business who you had sex with before you ended up in a relationship with them? And so, what the interviewer is looking for is that the partners are matched on what they say. It doesn't really matter what they say, it matters that they're matched. So, they go to one person and they go, no, that's not really their business. I mean, why would it be? We're together now. And then they go to the other person. And if they go, yeah, I agree, it's not really anyone's business. We're together now, then that's a match. So, it doesn't matter what the answer is, it matters that you're matched, because if you're not matched on that, you're going to have not just that one. I mean, there's endless, values. But you want to be matched on as many as possible, because if you aren't, there's a lot of potential for conflict in the relationship. Boundaries comes from values, basically. So you want to know what your values are so that you know what your boundaries are, and then set those boundaries up. And this can be really helpful when you're dating, because let's say a partner says, like let's stick with the sex example because it's a pretty common thing. So you start to date someone, and maybe they want to be intimate before you do. You need to know where your boundaries lie, because otherwise it's going to be like figuring it out on the spot. They'll be like, I think that, I really want to have sex, or what, however they communicate that. If you know you don't want to have sex until you're in a committed relationship or until you're married, then you know that value, and you set up the boundary and you communicate the boundary. You say, well, that doesn't fit with my beliefs, actually. Here's the way that I feel about it. If you don't have those boundaries or any idea about them, then you're just figuring things out at the time of. Other things include your likes and your dislikes. So these things, they can change. In fact, when you meet a romantic partner, you may get exposed to something you weren't exposed to before, like riding motorcycles or going for hikes or whatever it is. And you're like, I never thought I would enjoy this, but I really do. So they expand your sense of self, and you start to like new things. So those things can change over time, but it's good to get an assessment of them. Like, as you start dating someone, you want to be able to say, like, yeah, I'm a morning person, let's go for coffee, versus, I'm a night owl, or whatever it is. So that's part of knowing yourself. And then this last point is that once you've done this work to really know who are you now, you need to be yourself and not shy away from it or feel ashamed of it. Because how would you ever find a partner that's well suited to you, that has those similarities, if you're not comfortable being yourself and expressing yourself? You need to be able to say what your values are, where your boundaries lie, what your likes and dislikes are, so that you can find a partner who approves of those things and fits with your lifestyle. So even if there's something that you think is strange or weird, trust me, there's a partner out there that will like it, that will match with you. So don't shy away from it. Okay. So just be comfortable with yourself, get to know yourself, and then be yourself, because that's how you'll attract a great match. So that's kind of background, upbringing stuff. You need to do that kind of work in order to get well matched within a good relationship. Okay, now I'm going to shift into those two types of love. There's a lot of types of love, but the two that I'm going to cover today are the two main types that underlie our reasons for marriage in North America and many parts of the world, like, Western countries. Okay, so the first type is passionate love. So this is the type where it's usually present in the beginning of our relationships. It's what researchers, when we say like this person is in love, what researchers mean is that they're in passionate love. It usually does not last longer than 2 years, because it's a little bit maladaptive to maintain this type of intense connection for too long. So let me describe the attributes. So when you first fall in love with someone, you want to be with them all the time. You're thinking about them a lot. You're like on cloud nine. You have rose colored glasses where you're emphasizing their positive attributes and barely even noticing, if noticing at all, any negative attributes. So you think they're just like the most perfect partner in the world. In terms of the brain, so I put a picture here on the left side. Researchers have put people into the scanners to look at their brains when they're in this euphoric state. And they show them pictures of the person they're in love with and they watch what happens to their brain. And the parts of the brain that become activated with blood flow are the same regions of the brain where if like a person does cocaine and feels amazing, same region. If they are gambling and win big and they feel amazing, it's the same region. So it's like this really intense feeling, this really like it's actually an addictive state. Some people do get addicted to being in love because when it passes, they're no longer interested in that person. They want to go seek it out again to get that same feeling. So you can get addicted to it. But the point is, it's a very positive, rewarding, wonderful place to be in. Okay, people enjoy being in there. But the problem is that I put a roller coaster picture as well, is that if you're arguing with the person or if you're absent from them for too long or if they say something that hurts your feelings, it can be like a roller coaster of emotions. So you can go from the super high to a super low. It's not going to be that stable and steady. Okay, some people get married in this phase. So they meet someone, they've never felt this way before. So they go, this is the one. But really, we can fall in love many times. This is not really necessarily an indicator that this is the one. It's just a stage of love that's pretty normal. And so they might get married in this stage. And the problem here is that it might not transition to the other type I'm about to cover, which is called companionate love, which is really the type that predicts the long term happiness and success of a partnership. Okay, so just know here that passionate love is great. It doesn't usually last longer than 2 years, and the maladaptive things are like you lose sleep, things like that. Or let's say you're obsessively thinking about this person. How are you going to get anything done? You need to focus on school and work and other things. So it's not ideal. It's great while it lasts, but the main thing is don't get married in this stage. Just wait out a little longer, at least a year engagement and some time, a year dating, a year engagement, and then make sure you're able to transition into this next type, which is the companionate love. Okay, so what is this type of love? So this type of love, it's a little more boring than the passionate type. It's based on more of a friendship. So you can see the pictures here are, partners who are doing their leisure activities together. When you have this type of love, you're normally well matched with the person in terms of what you like to do. So you don't have separate lives where one person is, hanging out with their buddies all the time and the other one's always with their family. You actually spend a lot of your life together when you have this type of love. You have a lot of, shared leisure things you enjoy doing together. Basically anything like groceries. You can see the picture here, shopping for groceries, cooking together. So your whole life, it's not your whole life because you want some degree of independence too. Otherwise it gets like way too boring, but most of your life, you're spending it with your partner and you're enjoying that time together. In terms of like the physical intimacy, so with passionate love, you want to be touching them all the time. You want physical proximity. You want to be having sex. You feel really strongly attracted to that person with passionate love. When it shifts into companionate love, and for some people, they never have passionate, it's always companionate. It's more of like an affectionate bond, like you're going to be holding hands. You will still have sex, of course, but less frequently with less passion and intensity and emotion. So it might feel a little bit more routine. But it's a very affectionate bond. You feel very deeply connected to this person on a deep level. You love them very much. You're able to really be yourself and not worry that they're going to leave you if they see this side of you. So it's a really good place to be. The downside is the boring aspect. Okay, so it risks having like this more roommate or friendship feeling to it. You might risk losing some of the romance. And so I'm going to get to it later of what you can do to be in a companionate stage of love, or hopefully more than a stage. Hopefully it lasts for your lifetime. What you can do to interject that passion so it doesn't get too boring. Okay, so I'm moving now into that third segment of the talk where I'm going to address how do we maintain long term satisfying relationships. Okay, so the first point here, interdependence. Some people hear the word dependence and it has a negative connotation in our culture, so they don't like it. They feel like, I don't want to be dependent on a partner. You don't want to be overly dependent where they're like your whole life and basically you would collapse if, you can't go on if they're not in your life. I mean, you want to, it would be horrible to break up, of course, but you should be able to get through it. So they shouldn't be your whole life. But you do want to have a high degree of dependence. And what I mean by that is that, remember back to the attachment style that I covered at the beginning. So everybody has different needs, and they express those needs ideally when they're in that secure bond with their partner. So when you're interdependent, you're dependent on one another. It means you're dependent for fulfilling each other's important needs. And so everyone's needs could be a little different. So some people, they might say, well, what I need a partner for, I don't need a partner for money. Like I have a lot of money on my own and I'm fine that way. What I need a partner for is, well, I can't cook and I really hope that they can cook. That would be great. I'm kind of a serious person, so it'd be nice if they can make me laugh. So you have all these different things that you're seeking from a partner. So the best partnerships are where you're saying to yourself, my partner can provide for my needs better than anyone else can. I don't think of anyone else out there that could do it better than them. So when you feel that way, that they're meeting your important needs and that there aren't other people out there who could do it better, then you're going to have a high state of interdependence. Well, inter means you're doing it for each other. So they're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for them. So if your goal is to keep a partner, you'll want to know what their needs are and make sure you're fulfilling them better than anyone else can. Okay, so that's kind of interdependence. And so that predicts commitment. So there's this model that was developed based on this interdependence theory called the investment model. And this model has been used to predict commitment all over the world with thousands of participants. So it's a very robust model. It's highly effective. There are very few other models that can predict commitment better. So let me go through each of the predictors from the model so that you can understand them. So there's three. So the first one, satisfaction. So this model says that if you have high satisfaction in your relationship, in fact, of the three, satisfaction is the biggest predictor of commitment. So if you have high satisfaction, then you're going to be pretty committed to this person. Okay, so satisfaction with the partner, with the relationship. Quality of alternatives means how many other people out there can meet your needs as well or better than your current partner. And for some people, the quality of the alternatives doesn't necessarily mean another partner. It might mean one of my alternatives is just being on my own. When people get to a bad place in their relationship, they might be living with the person and thinking, I wish that this person wasn't here. I would be happier if they just didn't live here. I would just like to be on my own. That's actually an alternative, and it could be a very high quality one if you're getting to a bad place in your relationship. So with this model, you want high satisfaction, but low quality of alternatives. So you don't want all these other alternatives around you that, like some people have a lot of options compared to others. People who are good looking, for example, people just see that superficial attribute and they're attracted to it immediately. And so those people might have a lot of alternatives to choose from. So when you see couples where one person might be really good looking and the other one not so much, you think to yourself, you know, it's probably a bit unstable because people are usually matched in what they're bringing to the table. It doesn't have to mean that both bring good looks, but if one's good looking and the other one isn't, The other one has to bring something of equivalence to the table. And what exchange do we often see is looks for money. So, like, pre-COVID times, you go to Vegas, you often see that, like older men with younger women. The young women look great, the older men, not so much. You go, okay, she's there for the money. It's a pretty common, exchange of needs. Like he wants the looks, she wants the money. We're starting to see it happen a little bit more with the reverse gendered pattern, but it'll never be as much as what we see with men being the ones with money. But the point there is that they're both bringing a resource to the table, and they both want that from the other. They're both like kind of lacking it in themselves, and so it holds them together, but it's a pretty superficial partnership. Okay, so when you see these partnerships that seem imbalanced, like one's really good looking, the other one isn't, you say, okay, that other partner must be bringing something to the table that's keeping them intact. Okay, usually they're pretty well matched. So that's quality of alternatives. You want it to be low. The third one is investment size. And that's how much have you put into the relationship that would be lost if the relationship were to dissolve. So that could be things like, well, we're in a long distance relationship and we've put in so much time and so much money even to travel to see one another or to maintain our long distance plans or whatever it is. If we broke up, like all that would be lost. Or even emotional investment. Like I've told this person so much about me. If we break up, I've got to start all over again. It could be other things like a house and children. So you go, well, we have this house together, we have our kids, our life, even our friendship networks. If this relationship were to dissolve, I'd have, split custody. I'd lose this house. Some of our friends wouldn't talk to me. They'd be on my partner's side. So these are all things that irretrievable things you've put into the relationship that would get lost if you were to dissolve it. Okay, so if you want high commitment, you want satisfaction to be high. You want the quality of alternatives to be low, so not many people can provide for you as well as this person. And you want the investments to be high. That keeps you committed. But as I mentioned at the start, satisfaction is the main thing that keeps relationships intact. Because you can think of what a crappy situation it would be if you're not satisfied, but you don't have any other good alternatives around you. You're just like, there's nobody else that can really fulfill my needs any better than this person, and I'm not satisfied with them. And then in terms of investments, if those are high, like, oh gosh, I'm not satisfied, but I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose all this stuff if we break up. So you can imagine how satisfaction, you really want it to be high of the three, because otherwise you get kind of screwed. You could end up in a relationship where you feel like you can't leave because you're going to lose all these things, but you're not satisfied. So you want the mix of the three, but especially you want the satisfaction. Okay, so those are the three things that predict commitment worldwide, with a lot of people. Okay, this one I had to throw in there because when you're in a long-term committed relationship, communication is key. And the way that you communicate or argue with each other, it really predicts how you're going to do. There's a very famous researcher called John Gottman. He has collected data from thousands of couples, and he has so much data, like all this video data of them. And he basically, in one of his studies, he had couples come into his lab. He goes, think of a topic that you typically argue about. I'm going to leave you for a few minutes. I'm going to come back and you're going to talk about it. Every couple, just so you know, the things that they argue about at the beginning, they usually argue about until the end. It's the same arguments. It usually does not change. So when he leaves them there for a few minutes, they pretty much know, okay, we always argue about money. We're going to talk about money or whatever it is that's their topic. He comes back, he's filming them. He goes, okay, talk about it. So they start talking. He can watch them for only 90 seconds and predict whether they're going to break up. Even if they're married, he can predict if they're going to divorce just from a 90-second snapshot of watching them argue. So these are the things that he looks for to be able to predict that. So on the left side, we see the bad things. Okay, so if these things are present, and it's kind of like a slippery slope where you start at the top with criticism and you can end down at the bottom with stonewalling, so that when you get to stonewalling, you're pretty serious, like things are really bad, okay? But it could start with criticism. So criticism is where you are not addressing the behavior that bothers you, but you're addressing their character. And so, for example, if you say, maybe your partner's chore is to take out the garbage, and then you come home from work and you see the garbage is all the way full, has not been taken out, your partner is watching TV. So, criticism would be where you go, "You are so lazy. Why didn't you do your chores?" So, lazy is attacking their character. Okay, the better way to do it would be to attack, or not attack, but talk about the behavior that's the problem. So, you would say, "Why didn't you take out the garbage? That's your chore. Can you please do it?" So, that's addressing the issue at hand, okay, not attacking their character. So, criticism attacks their character. Contempt, that's where it's like criticism, but now you have an added level of disgust for your partner. In fact, Gottman identified an emotion that is universal, it exists across cultures, and it demonstrates disgust. And I don't know if I can do it, but it's like an eye roll with this, like, it's like that. So it's kind of like you're actually like, they tell you something, you're like, yeah, whatever. And it's demonstrating that you feel disgusted by your partner. So when that's present, it's a really bad sign as well. Defensiveness is where it's like, the person goes, "Why didn't you take out the garbage? That's your chore." And then defensiveness would be the other person responding with like, "Why don't you do the dishes?" or something like that. Okay, so it's like there's a lot of examples of defensiveness, but it's in response to being, criticized or attacked or questioned. Stonewalling is where you basically just shut down. So you have an emotional or even physical withdrawal from the situation. So the partner comes home and goes, "Why didn't you take out the garbage?" Then an example of stonewalling is you just keep on watching the television and you don't even acknowledge that they've said anything. You've just completely shut them out, emotionless. Another example would be you just throw down the remote and get up and leave. That's stonewalling too. Okay, so those are all terrible. Okay, so try it. If you have those things, let's move to the good side and try and replace them with the good stuff. So, okay, so on the top here, we have mutual problem solving. So this is where, if one person says, "Can I talk to you? There's something that's on my mind. It's been bothering me lately." And the other person goes, "Okay, yeah, what is it? Let's talk about it." And so you express what it is, and they're there with you trying to solve the problem, talking it through until you find a resolution together. That's mutual problem solving. That would be contrasted with something like you go, "Can I talk to you? There's something that's been bothering me." "Oh, here we go again. Always with the complaints." Okay, so that's not mutual problem solving. That's what we call that demand withdrawal. One person's bringing the issue to the table, the other person's withdrawing from the conversation, trying to not engage in the discussion. That's very unhealthy. Okay, the next good one is the I and XYZ statement. So if you want to bring something, and I should mention, don't bring everything up. Some things are just not worth it. Like, choose your battles wisely. Don't bring every single little thing. Ask yourself, is it worth it? Because if you bring every single little thing, that partner will just see you as like nagging them all the time. It's just, you really have to think through, is this thing important? And if it is, bring it up. But if it's not, just let it slide. Like, if you don't like the way your partner washes the dishes, but at least they're washing the dishes, you don't necessarily need to teach them how to wash the dishes. Okay, so think through what's important. So when you've decided something is important, you use these I and XYZ statements. So you start the sentence with I. So and then you think of what's the emotion of what this makes you feel. So I feel hurt when you don't take out the garbage because it signals to me you don't care about maintaining our home, or that you don't even care about the relationship, perhaps because it makes me happy when you do it, but then you don't do it. So you start with I, you say what the emotion is of how you feel, and then you describe the specific behavior that is bothering you. And then why that behavior is the Z part, is like why that particular behavior is leading to the emotion. Okay, so then this next point, think of the best qualities. When you're in the heat of the moment, the best thing you could do is, well, let me give you an example first of the worst thing. Okay, so you're in the heat of the moment. If you're too emotional to continue, it's okay to say, "Can we just take a little breather? I just need a little break because I'm too emotional right now. I don't want to be in this discussion when it's might not lead anywhere because of my emotion. Let's just take like a 20 to 30-minute breather. And then in that timeout, you think of their best qualities. Okay. Rather than the bad example would be thinking of all the things they've ever done wrong. So, oh my gosh, this person is not only this that they did today, but there was that time when they did this and this other time they did this. That's pretty unhealthy. Okay. Instead, try to think of like how sweet they were at a certain point in time, all the things they may have done right. Um, Sometimes people reflect back on why they loved this person in the first place, what brought them together. So Gottman's research again has demonstrated that when couples are in that heat of the moment or they're arguing, if you're sitting there thinking of all these other things your partner's done wrong, that's predictive of likely a breakup down the line. If you can sit there and say to yourself, no, this person, they probably don't mean it this way because they've done this and this right in the past. And then that helps bring your emotions, because you do get a physiological response in the heat of the moment. Your heart rate goes up, you start to perspirate, like there's a actual physiological reaction in your body that's bad for your health. So you need to bring yourself back to baseline, back to normal. So thinking of their best qualities can really help do that. And then you come in with a more clear head. Okay, then this last point, another healthy thing is that extend and responding to the olive branch. So when you're in an argument, try to interrupt it with saying, I really want to resolve this. I don't like being in this disagreement with you. Can we try to, make amends, or what can we do here to find a solution? And by that same token, if your partner's the one extending the olive branch, and sometimes it's not so clear where they speak it, so there's like in my research, there was a couple that described to me a ritual they had of when they were in an argument, if one person wanted to end it, they would put the toothpaste on the other person's toothbrush, whether in the morning or night, so that when that person went to go brush their teeth, they'd see the toothpaste on the toothbrush and they would know their partner wants to end the disagreement. So that's extending the olive branch. So you might have various ways of doing that in your relationship, but recognizing when it's being done and not being so like hot-headed or, ego focused that you go, wow, forget it. They want to end it. Well, I'm still mad. No, you try to, in a good relationship, you say, they want to end it. Let's see how we can resolve this. Okay, so this I think is one of my final slides. And so what are kind of, back to the title of my talk, the key or the keys for long-term love. And what I mean by that is a healthy relationship, a satisfying relationship, a great relationship that's thriving, okay? Not just lasting. You don't want to just like, we lasted 50 years, but we're, unhappy the whole time. You want to be in a great place. So here are some of those keys to it. The first one is the shared values. So you can never have too many similarities. Okay. The more similar you are, the better it is for happy, long lasting relationships, but especially on values, because those things won't usually change. Likes and dislikes, that helps you have that companionate style relationship where you want to, both go to the grocery store together. You want to both cook together because you enjoy doing those things together. And by that same token, perhaps you have similar dislikes as well, and that's fine too. The next one I've just gone over, so that you're respectful toward each other, that you in fact respect each other. So you don't have that contempt or disgust for your partner, that you treat them with respect even when you're in the middle of a disagreement, that you have healthy communication styles. Now, here's where I mentioned I would share with you when you're in the companionate style of a relationship, how do you keep it exciting and passionate? The way that you do that is by inserting these new, exciting, novel experiences into the relationship. So you want to do things as a couple that you both enjoy doing, but that you haven't done before. So that could be something like, it's very simple. It could be walking to a new place together, like taking a different walk, or getting in the car and driving to some place you've never been. If you're able, when we're not under COVID times, perhaps taking some lessons. Like, I've always wanted to learn how to salsa or to go to cooking class or whatever. So you do these new things. It doesn't have to necessarily be like, let's go skydiving, although that can be great. If you have the money, let's go away on a great vacation and take a cruise or whatever it is. That's fine too. But these can be simple things. So just doing new things together as a couple that you both enjoy, those activities stimulate passion in the bedroom or with respect to intimacy. So, this last point on the slide is that in the best relationships, we have a mix of predictability, but also this newness or this spontaneity. So we want the predictability, like we want to count on our partner, depend on them. We don't want to be constantly surprised. We need our home life to be secure and stable and to know what to expect from it. But too much of that can get boring. So you also need the newness, the freshness, the spontaneity. So the best relationships have a mix of both. Otherwise, you just get bored and you might start looking elsewhere for that spontaneity and the newness. Okay, so that really concludes my talk. And as I mentioned, I have left some time for Q&A if you have any. I put this link down at the bottom. That is basically when we weren't under COVID times, I had a radio show on campus, and some of the episodes are archived there. So if you want to, you can go listen to different topics that we've covered about relationships through that link. And with that, I'll open it up. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
I know there is a question on the chat.
I can look at the chat if I end my video share, I mean my screen share, or if someone wants to read them, whatever you want.
I'll read it. So one of the persons asked, so when your partner states let's spice things up, what kind of stage of love is that exactly?
When your partner, what's the first part? When your partner
States or starts trying to discuss let's spice things up, what kind of stage of love is that?
That's probably companionate love. And so you might have that affectionate bond, but it's getting a little boring from your partner's perspective. And so they're wanting to interject that passion. And so, again, you want to know your values and your boundaries. So, for example, what could happen here is that your partner might suggest something that goes against your values and your boundaries. They might go, let's have a threesome. And you're like, well, that's not okay with me. Or let's have an open relationship. And you go, no, that's not okay with me. But maybe you are okay with that. You need to know what are your values and then therefore where are your boundaries. So, but maybe they don't mean that. Maybe they just mean like what I've just shared, doing new things together. And then that translates into the bedroom. Okay. So you could start there. You could say, like, I learned today that if we go do some new and exciting things together, that it might spice things up. So should we give it a shot? Like what kind of new things could we do together? And Valentine's Day is coming up. You could, try takeout from a new restaurant or whatever you want to do. You have to decide for yourselves what you would both enjoy doing that's new and different, and then see if that leads to, spicing things up. And you would want to do that regularly, not just one time and then never again. So once a week or however often. But yeah, you're probably in companionate love and your partner's looking for a little more passion.
Okay, thank you. In addition, if you don't feel like speaking up, feel free to gather your thoughts or type in some questions you have in the chat. We'll give you a little bit time to sort of pick out some questions or gather your thoughts in that. Here's another question. Does age and love have common factors for a successful relationship / marriage?
So I think the person means like, if you're matched on age, is it better for long-term love? And not necessarily, although the more similar you are, as I mentioned, on as many attributes, the better. So being closer in age is more predictive of satisfying long-term relationships, but it doesn't mean that if you're mismatched that you won't have it. Especially in some cultures, that's how the partnerships go, where one person, usually the man, is going to be expected to be older than the woman. And so if that fits with your cultural values and norms, then that would be ideal. But yeah, I would say the greater the matching, the better. But you're not doomed if you're mismatched on age. Um, Older women with younger men, they're more prone to break up than vice versa. That's why I mentioned earlier, when you see those matches in Las Vegas, we'll probably never see it where it fully gets reversed. It's probably always going to be older men with younger women. That's more normal to see than vice versa, because cultures are still patriarchal. men still dictate the norms almost worldwide. And so, well, and other factors too. I can't get into it all, but you could read up on evolutionary theory, and there'll be a lot of information in there, like men overall have higher sex drive. A lot of different things go into that. But anyways, I would say the more stable partnerships are where you're matched on age, or if there's a mismatch, it's going to be more stable where the man is older than the woman.
Okay. In addition, someone had a comment. Perhaps their comment was, "Sounds like we should be skeptical of conventional wisdom, such as opposites attract. Science tells us we're better together if we're similar." Correct?
Yeah, you bring up a really very important, great point. So we have that phrase that opposites attract, and they do attract. They just don't last. So I'm going to give you a good example. So, probably most of you in here are students. So students need to study a lot. They need to be disciplined. They have their goals and they're working toward getting their degree. They have all their exams and their assignments, and they're, diligently organized and studying toward those things. Well, they might meet a partner who's very opposite of that and who's like not in school, and they go, "You study too much. You take life too seriously. Sometimes you need to let loose and have a little enjoyment and excitement in your life. Why don't you take the weekend off? Let's go to the beach." And so initially you're like, gosh, this is the balance that I really need in my life. This is great for me. I am pretty serious. I am always studying. I do need this person to shake it up, and this is great. So initially you'll find that you could be attracted to someone with opposite values and likes. And what happens over time is that you start to see those exact same attributes you were originally attracted to as like, so you go, yeah, I need more spontaneity. This person's so spontaneous and fun. That same attribute, later on, you're going to start to see it as lacking direction, having like no motivation, lacking discipline. So, all these exact same qualities, you frame them without the rose colored glasses anymore. You frame them in a negative light. And so we say those are now fatal flaws. They lead to the demise of the relationship. So similarities again are key. So you might be attracted initially, it just is not good for predicting long lasting. I just want to say one more thing on that, which is that complementarity is actually good, and you could get confused of what's the difference. Complementary traits are where you have a weakness in some way and your partner has a strength, so they can compensate for that. So maybe like you're not good with money management and you wish someone would help with money management, and your partner loves it and they're good at it and you can trust them. Ideally you could trust them. Otherwise, hopefully you're not in the relationship, and they take charge in that domain. And there's something else that they hate doing that you love doing. Maybe they hate cleaning and you love it. So those kind of things are different. It's where you like bring strengths to the relationship that make it better, that fulfill something that's lacking. So like a need fulfillment in a way. So that's complementarity. That's good. But opposites, not good.
Okay, thank you. In addition, we have another question. They asked, when you mentioned the older man gets a younger woman, who is most likely to get their heart broken? Would it be the older man or the younger woman within that relationship?
Well, normally, as I mentioned, it's a superficial bond holding the partners together. And so, you know, each is bringing something to the table. In this instance, the man has money and the woman has looks. The woman can get other, partners easily based on her looks, but the man can also get more partners easily based on the money. And so I wouldn't necessarily say one is more likely to get heartbroken. Both are at risk in that superficial arrangement. Um, I can't say, I can't say. I could say that men have a greater appetite for sexual variety than women do. So many women have it too, but more men have it. And so, when you look at like who cheats more, men cheat more than women. So irrespective of the arrangement, whether it's like an older man or younger woman or whatever it is, men are going to be more likely to want to stray or have other partners than is the woman. So in that sense, I guess the woman could be the one to end up with her heart broken more. I will say other things too, like men fall in love faster than women, which people just don't know that. They probably think the opposite. And women are more likely to break up relationships than men. So even though men are more likely to cheat, women are more likely to break up a relationship, whether from cheating reasons or other reasons. And so women, because they break up more than men, they're usually formulating it a little longer. So they know they're going to break up with that person. So they're preparing themselves mentally and emotionally and getting their network together to help them cope. And so when the breakup happens, men are more blindsided by it. So when your question is who might get their heart broken more, the woman might get her heart broken earlier on, but then she starts preparing the breakup and all this, and then the man is just like out of the blue, he doesn't expect that he's broken up with. So men fall harder when that happens because women have prepared more, practically speaking, in behind the scenes, I guess you could say.
Okay, thank you. Let me just interject real quick. For those of you who haven't personally mentioned me for your student ID or email, please do so before the end of the seminar. That way, we could you could provide us with your email, and we'll send you the free complimentary water bottle for attending this meeting. In addition, we do have some more comments and questions here. So give me one moment. Someone said, I found it interesting and convenient about the idea to do nonverbal things to end the argument, such as the toothpaste. This can be helpful to those who that are too prideful to say so in that situation.
Yeah, sometimes people have a problem with words. They didn't grow up expressing things verbally. And so, yeah, being able to communicate it in whatever way, even including nonverbals, is great.
Well, the next question would be disagreeing respectfully slide on that slide. How do you distress or speak your mind, or would you be a good person to talk about this so you can actually speak your mind, if I'm reading that right?
I'm not sure I understand it, but so
So
yeah,
it's on the disagreeing respectfully slide with that.
right, right.
How do you distress or speak your mind? Distress or speak your mind, I'm gonna assume it's okay. Let's see. Or who would be a good person to talk to about this? Can you actually speak your mind during those situations? Let's see.
I mean, let me say a couple things there, I guess. Let's say you're not good at it and you need help. Therapy is always amazing, no matter what, whatever the thing, like everybody can benefit from therapy. So if you're the other thing is that sometimes people go to therapy and they don't really connect well with the therapist, so they think therapy is not for them. The issue is you need to try it out until you find a good match, because the best predictor of whether therapy is going to work is if you actually like that therapist, get along with them, and trust their opinion. And so you might try out a few before you find one that you really connect with. So be diligent. Okay, find a good therapist. But you can bring this up in therapy where you go, when I'm in the heat of the moment, I'm not good at expressing myself in a respectful manner. Here's an example of what I might say, and I don't want to be criticizing my partner, but how can I change it? I need the skills to change it. And they can work with you through role playing where they go, okay, I'll be your partner, let's talk it through. So therapy can be really useful for getting that practice. But even if you're not in therapy, you can use your disagreements to get the practice. So remember what you learned today and say, okay, I'm going to stop myself. I'm not going to respond how I usually do. I'm going to try an XYZ statement and see how it goes. And ideally, you fill your partner in, on what you learned. There's a good book you can get. It's called Intimate Relationships. It's by Roland Miller, and he puts out a new edition every few years. So I think the latest edition is from a couple years ago. But he'll go into greater depth about all this. So you could share that with your partner. You go to the communication chapter, which I think is chapter 5, and you read it. You both read it. So now you have some skills. You at least have the knowledge. And then when you get into a disagreement, you actually practice it. And the more you start practicing those good ways of being, then the better you get at it. And then it becomes a habit, and you can do it over time.
Hopefully that answered the question to some degree for the person who asked. In addition, one of the final questions perhaps for the thing is there an appropriate time frame to start dating after breaking up? Is the question.
No, there is no appropriate time. You sometimes can learn about yourself through dating people. So even if you're not going to end up in a long-term relationship with someone you're dating immediately after a partnership dissolves, those people can still help you in some way to get through it. You know, you might learn more about yourself. You might talk about the breakup. Ideally, you're not talking about it with them. It's better with a therapist. But in any case, it can help you cope and work through things. Um, Everybody's different. Just know yourself, know what you're comfortable with. If you end up on a date and you know it's too soon and you start like crying over the breakup, then it's too soon. Don't go on another date. Okay. Give yourself the time you need to heal, to process, to decide for yourself what happened, talking with friends, spending time with family, healing yourself. But other people, they do that through dating. So it really, it just depends. But ideally, if you're looking for a long-term partnership, you probably won't find it until you've healed. So if that's your goal, take some time out and work on yourself, spend time with family and friends, and then get into the dating scene when you've healed.
Okay, thank you.